Mayor Cruz, we are live now.
Good evening, everyone. A call to order a regular meeting for the Normal Town Council for Monday, October 5th, 2020. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus,
Here.
Mr. McCarthy,
Here.
Ms. Cummings,
Here.
Mr. Nord,
Here.
Ms. Smith,
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Here.
Mr. Preston.
Here. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The governor has issued a disaster declaration related to the public health concerns caused by the statewide COVID-19 pandemic. As mayor, I've determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the risk of exposure to the COVID-19 virus stemming from an indoor gathering, and that remote meetings are best in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the council, staff, and general public. We go to public comment, and we have 7 people who wish to comment tonight. The first commenter would be Kelly Williams. Do we have Kelly Williams?
Mayor,
Yes.
she is on the call. She's unmuted right now, though.
Unmuted, Ms. Williams. There you go. We'd ask you to state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes for public comment.
Great. Kelly Williams. Thank you, Mayor Kus and the town council members. My name is Kelly Williams, and I'm the vice president of the McLean County Wheelers, a nonprofit club of over 150 cycling enthusiasts, primarily residing in the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington, but is open to all with an emphasis on central Illinois. We encourage and support safe cycling for recreation and fitness. In addition to recommending and leading safe cycling routes, our club provides mentoring and education to members on the importance of adhering to and respecting the rules of the road and shared use bikeways. Our club is also affiliated with local, state, and national bicycle advocacy organizations, and we work with them closely. We encourage the council to accept and support implementation of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan update. By April, bicycle sales had grown 75% across the country. I don't know what our specific bike shops in this community experienced numerically, but I know that it was dramatic, coinciding with stay-at-home orders. That is a lot of new cyclists on trails and streets that have varying degrees of safe infrastructure. An updated master plan is well timed to create safe cycling, safe walking, and community collaboration when using walkway and bikeway networks. Town is to be commended on its commitment to the current plan. It's done great things. Our club members use the current network extensively and appreciate its benefit to those sharing its use. Council's acceptance and support of the master plan update will enhance the town's walking and biking status by filling in missing network connections, improving safety for all, including motorists at key intersections, meeting the expressed community needs for more bicycle and pedestrian facilities, providing events and education for the population, among other excellent strategies and tactics to achieve the town's goal of becoming a better walking and bicycling community. Our club looks forward to seeing the plan turn into action, and thank you for your support and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Laurel Schumacher.
Ms. Schumacher, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Ms. Schumacher, I need you to state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Laurel Schumacher. Good evening, Normal Town Council. My name is Laurel Schumacher, and I come to you this evening in support of the Normal Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan. I am currently a board member of the Friends of the Constitution Trail, as well as a long-standing member of the Lake Run Club. I am in favor of the adoption of this plan and wholeheartedly support the master plan's vision for the enrichment and enhancement of our trail system and the surrounding areas in our community. 2 years ago, my husband and I both retired, he from State Farm and myself from ISU. I am a retired first grade teacher. During the time we were making those big retirement decisions, we also downsized our home. As we were house hunting, our number one criterion was that our retirement home had to be in Normal. We wanted to live in and pay our tax dollars to Normal, largely due to the well-managed government, quality of life offered, which was largely built around an active and vibrant lifestyle, and the progressive and forward-thinking mindsets that we support for our community. The proposed pedestrian bike master plan is an example of those qualities. We appreciate the community values and the potential this plan presents. The plan will only further serve to enrich and enhance our community. As an active runner, I can speak for many of us who appreciate the trail system as a means of having a safe and traffic-free space to enjoy our sport. We utilize the many wonderful features the trail provides, such as the fountains, the trail crossing enhancements, and the well-maintained pathways. The trail is widely used by runners, run clubs, and running events. The master plan supports runners, walkers, cyclists, and many factions of our community who enjoy being outdoors and maintaining an active lifestyle. I truly believe that the trail system makes our community stand out as a desirable place to live and work, as well as a destination for visitors to enjoy. Please adopt this plan, and with it, a vision to support and enhance the quality of our life of our residents in our community. I believe that the commitment to this will pay huge dividends in the potential to attract business and new residents to our community, as well as continue to support a quality of life so many residents now enjoy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Our next speaker is Zach Dietmeyer. Mr. Dietmeyer, I would ask you to state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to make your comments.
I think you're still on mute, Mr. Dietmeyer, and you may have missed the mayor's introduction. So.
Thank you, Pam. Yes, Zach Dietmeyer. I'm a resident of Normal and representing as an employee of Rivian. We are very excited to see the updates to the bicycle and pedestrian master plan for our business. Several of our employees utilize the roadways to Rivian currently, riding their bicycles to and from work daily. And as it is at this moment, not an extremely safe option for many of our employees heading to the west side of town. And many have voiced their concerns in the past for being able to get out to our plant safely. We are also excited because several of our employees visiting from across the globe sing the praises of our trail system. When they are in Normal, they utilize it regularly as employees. We are big fans of different varieties and choices in mobility as a company. And of course, as you can see, the Adventurous Forever motto allows for new adventures around our community in many of these ways. We thank you for your support of the company. We look forward to our future growth as a company and as a community. And we're very supportive of the updates to this plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is George Farnsworth. We have you connected, Mr. Farnsworth. You're on mute.
Am I unmuted?
You're good now. So I'd ask you to state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes for public comment.
Okay, I am George Farnsworth, retired civil engineer, longtime resident of Bloomington Normal, and have been involved with the bike project from day one when Constitution Trail was established years ago. And my main reason for wanting to jump in here and comment is that I've never done this before on this side of the table, and just say thank you for doing this. This is master plan is a lot of work, and I appreciate the council's supporting the energy that's gone into it. Okay. How's that?
Yeah, that's
Got
great.
it?
Have you concluded your comments?
No, I haven't.
You're good.
Okay.
Continue.
Am I stepping on what I just said?
Seems like there's feedback playing behind Mr. Farnsworth.
Mr. Farnsworth, if you have your YouTube channel open, can you please mute that?
I got it down. That's my fault. Sorry.
No problem.
Let me just say, I really appreciate the council having undertaken and supported this revisiting the master plan. There's been a lot of work done over the years. And just a couple of comments about goals. I know the goals have been laid out in the master plan as, I believe it's equity, connectivity, and safety, so forth. I, for one, would put safety up on number one. And when you do that and look at some of the sensitive points on the trail right now, a number of other things shake out that deal with connectivity and equity. One area that concerns me very much, and it has from the beginning, is the Veterans Parkway Crossway. This is no mystery to any of you, but I would hope you'd keep the energy up to resolve that crossing barrier. It's like a river through town, and it takes the same kind of extra pains to get across it. But I've, over the years, seen a lot of equity issues connected with it, allowing both sides of the community to use the full amenity of the trail. And the economic side of it too, where I see people using public transportation to get to work for some of the low and moderate income jobs and are struck by the barrier when they get off the bus. And that needs some assistance too, I think, to accomplish some of these goals. I also like to comment that this thing doesn't stand by itself as a normal project or Bloomington project. It's a vital whole. First seen in the many times I've been down at Shirley in the south end of that leg down there and had conversations with people from China and Japan and Germany and literally all over the world that have come from Chicago and come through the whole community. And one German fellow told me that Bloomington Normal is well known by aficionados of Old 66, if you can believe that. So basically, that's what I like to say. A couple anecdotal things is I think some attention needs to be given to crossing the busy streets, Willow and Vernon. One thing I appreciate, I've seen, I don't know what the routine is for the police department to patrol it, but I've seen officers on bikes and they make an excellent impression for the town. They're in shape, they look like they're enjoying what they're doing, and they're very friendly to the users on the trail. So that's well worth your time to support that, I think. So Anyway, that's all I have to say, other than thank you very much for supporting this work.
Thank you, Mr. Farnsworth. Our next speaker is Dan Turkla. Mr. Turkla, if you'd state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes for public comment.
Mr. Turkla, your microphone is muted. Can you please unmute yourself?
How's that?
Much better.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dan Turkla. I'm a resident of Bloomington and a volunteer at the West Bloomington Revitalization Project's Bike Co-op. And I suppose I'm here to speak for other volunteers at the co-op and other avid cyclists in the area, speak in support of the bicycle and pedestrian plan that Mercy Davison and her team has put together, which is quite impressive. I really appreciate the invitations that they've sent out to the public to participate in the sort of shaping of the plan. I don't have very much to say except that those of us at the co-op, Bike Co-op, are really excited about the plan, in large part because of the ways in which it meshes with our goals, which are to promote bikes as a fun and safe way to get around, a form of transportation, and especially to get them to people who don't have a lot of money, who need them to get to work in particular, and as a former elementary school teacher, for kids, which I think is way cool. So what the plan has to offer meshes very nicely with what we're all about downtown, and I think it's having people on bikes is kind of an unarguable benefit for any community, more people on bikes, because it increases people's health, and which is particularly important during these pandemic times, and reduces vehicle emissions and all of those kinds of things. So I'm just here to support the thing wholeheartedly for myself and all of my colleagues on the West Side. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Turkla. Our next speaker is Patrick Dullard. And make sure your mute's off, Mr. Dullard.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Patrick Dullard. I'm a resident of Normal, and I'm also the president of the Friends of the Constitution Trail. I'll also disclose that I served on the steering committee for the Normal's bicycle pedestrian plan update. I'm sure that you're starting to recognize me as someone who regularly addresses the council in favor of trail improvements. Tonight wouldn't be any different in my support of the bicycle and pedestrian plan update. However, as a member of the steering committee of this project, I want to let the council know how proud I am of this effort. One often hears concerns about the use of consultants for government projects, but I can assure you that this isn't some boilerplate plan pushed by the consultant. We experienced significant community engagement in the development of the plan, and the input provided by residents was instrumental to the final product. I wanted to take a moment to recognize the work of Kevin Neal from Alta, and Mercy Davison and Ryan Otto from the town of Normal for their leadership and hard work in formalizing the plan. We live in a community that values inclusiveness and a well-functioning local government capable of improving public safety. This plan certainly addresses those values. I urge you not only to approve the plan tonight, but also to work diligently to implement it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dullard. Our final speaker is Tim McHugh. Can you hear me, Mr. McHugh?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I'd ask you to state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes for public comment.
My name is Tim McHugh, and I'm here to support implementation of the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan. I've been working with the committee on the plan since early March. And one of the things that is a measure of how welcoming a community is how easily everyone can access all of the resources that that community has to offer. And the new Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan makes so many more resources in our community available to so many more people. There are times in my life as a wheelchair user that I don't drive independently. I don't want to wait for a ride. I just have somewhere I want to go and I want to get there, whether it's the grocery store, whether it's church, whether it's somewhere else in my life that I need to go. Being able to hop in my chair, take off and go is what I want to do. And all of the additions and changes that are part of the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan make so many more pieces of our community more able for me to get there, and hopefully more welcoming to anybody who would want to join our community who isn't someone who drives or is someone who might have limited mobility or get around very differently. I wanted specifically to commend the work being done by Alta Consulting. They're a group that from the very beginning of the process all the way to the very, very end, were willing to consider issues of accessibility. I remember their final presentation that they put together for our committee, and it was literally the last question I asked at the end of a 2-hour presentation about updating some language and updating some of the ways we were addressing accessibility. And here we are at the very far end of the process, and they're still willing to incorporate those changes. So I wanted to commend them for always keeping accessibility and availability at the forefront of their thought process, and just the overall willingness of everyone in the community to put this work together and do something that is going to make our community incredibly welcoming for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. That concludes our public comment tonight. We move to the omnibus agenda items considered routine and will be handled with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. Ms. Cummings.
I'd like to call item A.
I'm sorry, item A?
Yes, sir.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to pull items C and G.
Mr. Preston?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to pull item E.
Ms. Lorenz?
Okay, I would like to pull B as in boy, D as in dog, H as in Henry. I might have gutted the omnibus, sorry.
And Mr. Nord?
No, thank you. Mine were already pulled.
Thank you. Motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
One item considered under the omnibus tonight, and that is a resolution authorizing the execution of a collective bargaining agreement with the International Association of Firefighters Local 2442. Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item A is an approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of September 21st, 2020. Ms. Cummings?
Approval.
Second.
Ms. Cummings?
Yes, the only reason why I brought this particular item up is because the spelling actually changes the meaning of the language within the sentence. In a statement that I made that was on page 8, insight was spelled INSIGHT, which it should be spelled INCITE. And the only reason why it's brought up because literally changing that spelling would change the meaning in the language of the sentence.
Thank you. Further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Approval of the minutes is approved. Item B is a report to receive and file town of Normal expenditures for payment as of September 30th, 2020. Ms. Lorenz.
Yes, thank you. I have just a few items of
Motion for approval.
Oh, pardon me. Motion to approve the bills, please.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Lorenz.
All righty, thank you. Getting ahead of myself. Just a few items of clarification. 2 items. One, the expense on the WSP Tiger Grant Phase 1. What expenses do those represent? And maybe a second part of that, is that part of a Phase 1 that was approved several years ago?
Yes, Ms. Lorenz, I'll jump in and answer that. If we need more details, certainly Mr. Aldrich is on the call, but the WSP expense is for WSP Parsons Brinkerhoff. They are performing the Phase 1 design for the underpass project. So this is part of the agreement that was, it has been a couple years old now, at least.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, very good. And then the last item of clarification is a little further down, the $4,900 bill. I think it looks like maybe some sewer work done on Sugar Creek. Is that the part between Blair and Towanda?
Well, I'm not exactly sure where the expense is. If it's on the same page, I don't see it, but
It's on page 18. Clark and Dietz. Top of page 18.
oh, yeah, that's the North Branch Phase 2 construction. So stormwater management, I believe that is the project that was bid out this summer, but I guess I can defer to Mr. Aldrich if he can respond to that. It's on the last page of the expenditures.
Yeah, if that's for Clark Dietz and Phase 2 is construction, inspection, and administration type of services for the Creek project that was built this summer.
Okay, all right. Been a lot of interest from residents in that area, so just wanted to clarify. Thanks so much. That's all I had.
Further discussion, Mr. Nord?
Thank you. On PDF page 13, under Mayor and Council, there's an expense for Transportation America. When I asked Ms. Reese about this, about what taxpayers receive for this payment, she sent me to the website for Transportation America. So I took that as I need to look at that to get a gauge as to what this is for. But the website appears to be that they're dedicated to bus transportation, bus transit. And we have a intergovernmental agreement where Normal pays Connect Transit to manage and maintain the public transportation related concerns. So my question is, it doesn't seem like it makes sense for the town to be paying for this when we pay Connect Transit to manage all of this. And I understand that the money's already spent and that this was a part of the budget before, but it was not specifically a line item that was specifically called out. So going forward, I would just like to say that I would like to have the town justify this before we pay for it next year. Otherwise, let's let Connect Transit decide if this is a worthwhile transportation expense, because the membership, they should be the ones enjoying the benefit of it and determining whether it's worthwhile or not.
Mr. Nord, I'll answer that. It's a membership dues to be a member of that organization. You're not correct in saying they're primarily bus oriented. They deal with all forms of transportation initiatives. They're an innovative group, and they can be a resource to us in the community by being members, talking about things such as road work, road expansion, you name it, if it has to do with transportation. And they're a subset of Smart Growth America. So they're kind of looking at environmentally sound and forward-thinking transportation planning and advice. And we've been a member of that organization for, I'm going to say 8 to 10 years. And that fee was the annual dues.
Mayor Kus, if I could also jump in and just clarify for council's understanding, while I certainly did share the website, it was for Mr. Nord to learn more about the organization, but I also indicated in my email to you, Mr. Nord, I said we use this, our membership with T4 America for transportation and transit policy information. We learn about pending legislation, and we also use it for transportation related resources, just to find out what's happening in transportation across the nation and in regard to various policy matters. So I did share that in my email communication.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The item passes. Item C, Mr. Nord, could you lower your hand? Thank you. Item C is a resolution to accept water treatment plant chemical bids from November 2020 through October 2021. Mr. McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. Move approval.
Second.
Go ahead, Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you. At the risk of good comedy, I won't ask the water department director to go through each of the chemicals that they have to review in this bidding process, but rather to say first, thanks for the very thorough job of going through this every year and a very thorough vetting process that you always do in this. There's a number of items like this that are part of our annual process and purchasing agreements that we go through. And I know it's a lot of work to put all those bids out and get the best value you can for the taxpayer dollar. And I know we all appreciate that greatly. I do just want to make a quick note on the council report that the prices went up on average, not quite 5%. And I do want to, for those residents that from time to time we talk about different rates, that every single year when we get this report, that number goes up. There's a percentage of increase in the cost of our water system and the cost of operating our water system. And so when those small increases that you see on an annual basis in part pay for this and the other things, the other costs of the inputs and the operations of the water system that happen. And so although this is a small percentage, it can lead to a large bill depending on the amount of chemicals and the amount of water that we process on a yearly basis. So just wanted to call that out and thank staff again for all the hard work on our water system.
Smith?
In some email correspondence I was exchanging today, it indicated to me that it is not possible to find a single vendor to provide all of the chemicals. So we do have it split among these various parties. I wanted to ask two questions. Do we lock in these rates for that whole time frame? And so regardless of what might happen in the supply chain, these vendors are committing to give these chemicals to us at this price. And a second follow-up question is, in my correspondence, it was mentioned that we don't have the storage capability to stockpile large amounts of any of these supplies. So are we certain that the supply chain will be able to keep us in these chemicals as we need them?
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I will ask Mr. Burkhart to unmute and respond to those questions.
Yeah, typically, yes. These prices will be locked in for a full year. Occasionally, there are major disruptions in supply chains. CO2 vendors are one, being that the quality of the CO2 that we purchase is a food grade. If they have issues in any sort of production, they may go to what they call a force majeure. They give us advance notice, and they say any deliveries after this date will incur a 2% increase. We either accept that, or we can try to go to a different vendor. Anytime a force majeure is placed, they usually give us the option during that cost increase. If we can solicit a cheaper price somewhere else, they will let us out for that short duration. And then going about supplies, we have not had an issue with any supply. We've worked with all of these vendors in the past. Yeah, no issues anywhere. Again, if they have something, a plant goes down, they typically will talk to us along with all their other water treatment plants that they work with, and will allow us to solicit quantities from somebody else in those sort of emergency instances.
And that force majeure is just an escape clause in their contracts in case they're facing some unbearable pressure on their supply and have no option to continue providing the committed cost to us. So they will they're allowed to invoke that clause in the contract and give us the option then to go elsewhere.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. I'll lower my.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item D is a resolution to award a contract with Greenfield Contractors LLC for the construction of a new salt storage building in the Public Works Yard in the amount of $120,685.08. Ms. Lorenz.
Move approval on this resolution, please.
Second.
Second.
Ms. Lorenz.
Thank you. Well, I mean, this is totally a matter of routine, so I kind of hate to pull it, but I just couldn't help but wonder why Stark came in so much higher. So if that question could be addressed. And then secondly, just as a matter of interest, I found it a really good report, and it was nothing short of like a really cool math problem to see, you know, how it is that we could really maximize the amount of storage on a given, you know, footprint. So I just wanted to commend the staff for really challenging the bidders to think creatively. And I think we saw the result of that with the Greenfield who we are selecting. But if you wouldn't mind mentioning why you think that there was such a large difference with Stark. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lorenz. This is it was a very detailed and comprehensive report with a lot of information. So I do appreciate your reading through it and trying to go through all the numbers. I will defer to Mr. Aldrich. He and his team did a great job in terms of the analysis of the bids and took kind of an unusual and unique perspective to compare pricing this year.
Yeah, thank you. I think some contractors, and one example is Stark, looked at this as kind of a joint venture. So they would be the general contractor with the proprietary fabric structure contractor supplier being a subcontractor. So I just think the nature of that arrangement probably made prices go up a little bit. Whereas a greenfield is a contractor that does this for a living. They have relationships with the supplier of the fabric structure, and this is kind of their business. They put up these types of structures all the time. So I think that would probably be the primary reason I would give for the start prices being higher.
Okay. Well, again, I appreciated the nice write-up, so thank you for that answer.
Ms. Smith?
I just had a question about the timing of this, and also the decision to switch from what is out there now with the asphalt wooden structure into going to fabric. Is this the trend in construction for these facilities? And will it be completed in time for our storage of this winter's order of salt?
Yeah, this is the trend for salt storage, to use these types of structures, tension fabric type structures. You'll see these all over the place. Whereas 30 years ago, you saw the salt domes everywhere, and a lot of folks are still using the wooden salt domes. But because of the nature of that salt dome, and it's 30 plus years old now, so it's experiencing some issues. There's been some settlement on the site that causes some other issues. So you'll see all over the place agencies dealing with maintenance of these old wooden salt domes. So I think we're not alone in having some issues with our old salt dome. The other question you had was related to the timing. So we're under a contract with state purchasing for the purchase of salt. It's a 2-year contract. So timing is not always up to us. So we've actually received this year's shipment of salt. So it's laying in the Public Works yard. So we really need a place indoor to store it. Otherwise, we will need to buy tarps, which we will do and have done in the past, to cover our salt piles and then protect it from runoff as well. So we're very anxious to get this structure built so we can put that salt inside and protect it.
How long do they think it will take?
I think they estimate 4 to 6 weeks to get the materials delivered and on site. So this type of thing should go fairly quick in my estimation. I'd say probably within a month they would have the structure completed.
Mr. Nord.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of these hoop type structure buildings, these fabric structures. So I'm happy that the town is going this route. This is something that, in my experience dealing with communities all over Illinois, that these structures are very, very versatile. There's lots of material storage going in them. I've seen some huge projects. And one thing that I would like to point out is, in Normal, folks cannot just build these buildings for use for occupancy if they want to park equipment in there. If you go down to the city of Bloomington to their yards, they've got a structure just like this with the same precast blocks. And it's a neat structure to see. They park a lot of their equipment in there. And I would like to see the town reconsider the ability for private owners, businesses, to be able to use these types of structures as well, because as we can see from the town's expense, this is very cost efficient. And I'd like to, let other business owners and property owners benefit as well. But thank you. And thank you, staff, for looking into this.
Thank you, Mr. Nord. I'm going to jump in, Mayor, if I might. I did ask Mr. Tremmel to be present on this call because I knew, Mr. Nord, you had mentioned that you believed these sorts of structures were not permitted in Normal. So I wanted to make sure Mr. Tremmel could explain the type of structure and what is permitted so that there wouldn't be any confusion.
Thank you, Ms. Reesent, and good question, Mr. Nord. I'll just comment is we've seen these used about the community. For the most part, they've been for product or equipment storage. We have had some inquiries where vehicle storage would be something we'd have to consider. I mean, the building code does have some limits on construction types and different applications. And so that's something we'd have to take a look at. A lot of times with vehicle storage, there are other code elements that come into play with regard to like if the vehicles are being washed off and some of the products that come off of larger vehicles wind up needing to be collected by an oil interceptor. But again, we can look at each particular application, on its own merits. But I would say our experience in recent past has really been more about product or just pure equipment storage and not necessarily vehicles or certainly occupancy type situations. So happy to look at it though.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye, the resolution is approved. Item E is a resolution reapproving the preliminary subdivision plan for Northbridge subdivision. Mr. Preston.
Move approval.
Second.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks, Mayor. One, I just a comment first. I'm glad to see with this action that the developers of the neighborhood plan to continue developing further, and it's always a good sign when residential development is moving forward rather than at a standstill. So I'm a comment in appreciation, I guess, for where we're at in our market and that things are picking up from where they were. And then a question for staff. So we have long had as a kind of on the horizon potential project looked at doing a park in the Northbridge area. And to my recollection, that conversation initially came about when there was also conversation going on at Unit 5 a number of years ago about adding an elementary school up there as well, and wanted to just kind of get an update from staff. I'd gotten a question from a few residents in that area about kind of the park desert, as they described it, that exists because there's not any parks within easy walking or biking distance, since that neighborhood's kind of somewhat isolated up north. In reference to, obviously it's not pertinent necessarily to the specific thing that we're voting on here tonight, but thought it was a good opportunity to kind of touch base on staff and see if there's any further thought or update as to the Northbridge Park, and make sure that my history of that conversation is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Preston. Your history absolutely is correct. The original plan did plan for a park and a combined school site. The closest thing that comes to mind would be something comparable to Prairieland Elementary School, where you have Prairieland and Carden Park combined. When this subdivision was annexed, the plan was to have a park and an elementary school site up there. Unit 5, quite some time ago, probably mid to late 90s, probably not that far back, early 2000s to mid 2000s, when development slowed down. Unit 5 determined that it was not on their horizon to build another elementary school, and we have not planned to build a park up there at this point. It is not anything that's in our 5-year plan for, our 5-year CIP, Community Investment Plan. That is certainly something we can have on our list, but that would be prioritized with other community projects. And sorry, just went in the dark. So we, at this point, I think the residents are accurate in saying there's no close neighborhood park, or even the nearest park would be hopping on the linear park, which is Constitution Trail, which does go through Northbridge, Heather Ridge, and North Fields, connects up to Northtown Road. And then that would be the closest way and easiest way to access Ironwood Park, but even that is kind of a hike from the subdivision. So at this point, we don't have any park development in our plan.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye, the resolution is approved. Item G, a resolution authorizing participation in the local cure program and related programs.
Move approval.
Second.
Mr. McCarthy, I'm sorry, Mr. McCarthy. And we have a second. Go ahead, Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you. I guess just a little bit of clarification as I read this. I believe what I understand is we're being asked to support participation in a state-operated program that's funded by the federal government for relief funds for the pandemic. Do I understand that accurately, Ms. Reese?
That is accurate. Yes.
Okay. I thought that's what I read, but I just want to make sure that's in fact what this was about. And I appreciate you answering some questions earlier on it as well. I just want to encourage my council counterparts to support this item as it can directly help the town in light of the pandemic and all of its impact on the town. And this is something that could really help. So please support it. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
And for clarification, then this is funding to help the town offset some of its increased costs to COVID. Are there any dollars that can be provided as flow through the town for other grant programs as well?
There may be some to come along through the CURE program. The initial CURE funding or CURE access to CURE dollars for local governments as a reimbursement kind of program for some expenses we are incurring. Just last week, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity posted a notice that they have that they are now accepting applications for grants from local governments to support the local economy. So, there might be funding opportunities along through a grant program that would go beyond just helping municipalities with relief, but maybe ways that we can help others.
And could you provide some examples of the additional costs that the town has incurred in tackling this pandemic?
Yes, I can try, and I'll ask Mr. Hansen to jump in as well. Some of the costs that come to mind include workplace modifications, such as plastic barriers, sanitizers, overtime expenses associated with COVID. Those are the things that come to mind right now. I'm going to ask Mr. Hansen to jump in if he thinks of others.
So just one example that does stick out in my mind is that when Amtrak closed the building and we provided the portalette and a washing statement, was that a cost that Amtrak bore, or was that a cost the town bore?
That was a cost that the town bore. That actually is on our list where I believe that's our FEMA list that we are seeking reimbursement through FEMA. We have a couple of different programs available to us. The CURE is coming through the state. FEMA was the federal dollars. So we have a couple different avenues that we're tracking expenses and submitting to the appropriate resource.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Nord.
Thank you. So with this vote before us, if we vote yes, this gives the approval to fill out whatever paperwork needs to be done to try and seek funding or reimbursements, correct?
Correct.
And then once we get this money, will it come back to the council to ask how we want to use it for either any money that's like grant that's going towards something else and not reimbursing an expense?
Well, I can respond to that by saying the reimbursement expense, obviously, if it's associated with overtime or such, that's already been incurred, so it would just be reimbursing us. For new dollars, though, that you have asked about, if it's a grant program, we would have to have a program that we are asking the state to fund through this, so we can certainly bring that program to council's attention and make you aware of it. I'm not sure if that would sometimes, and part of the reason for this request tonight is time is of the essence. When the state posts their grant opportunities, we have to be ready to submit an application pretty quickly, and we want to be able to do that. So it's possible that we could make council aware of a program that we've been able to put together and have submitted for funding. I'm not sure if that would come before or after funding notification, but usually I do my best to keep council aware of our grant applications.
Okay, but after that money's been awarded, it's still going to come back to the council for us to approve if we want to spend it on whatever that grant application was for. So it's not something new. So we're not essentially also voting for funds to be spent. All we're doing is just voting for trying to get funds.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Just to redirect and recenter, this grant is for the reimbursement of expenses. Is that what I understand?
It's actually broad. It's
Okay.
for reimbursement, but it's also if other funding opportunities come along through the CURE program. So we wanted to cast a wide net so we don't miss any opportunities to seek funds through the CURE program.
I was hoping that's what you were going to say. and that's good. And again, I encourage my council counterparts to put us in the position to be ready to respond and be as close to the front of the line as we possibly can in this. Thank you.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Item H is a motion to postpone the public hearing process for the text amendment for One Normal Plaza planned unit development. Ms. Lorenz.
Yes, I'd like to move on this motion to postpone.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Lorenz.
Yeah, I wanted to pull this and maybe kick off the conversation. Thank you. And I'd like to kick it off by reminding all of us of a really good letter to the editor. I will read it quickly. It's not terribly long, from our former Mayor Harmon, because I think this really does set an important backdrop to what this PUD is all about, what the zoning text amendment was meant to be, what it wasn't meant to be. So bear with me. This was from August, late August, I believe. One Normal Plaza has presented concerns to Normal for more than 40 years. When the state closed the orphanage in the early 70s, the property was offered to ISU, which accepted the farmland but rejected the campus. Next, the state raised possibility of using the campus for a prison. Mayor Godfrey at the time went ballistic and neighbors were spared a prison. The campus was then quietly sold to a group of investors and nothing much materialized over the next several years. From 1985 through 1993, the town continued its long-time efforts to gain control of this property. And after the property reverted back to the state, the town finally succeeded in acquiring the portions of the campus which had not been sold to private owners. There were explorations of converting this area to a social service agency campus. Obviously, this was not accomplished. As of today, there are various private owners at One Normal Plaza and progress on development has happened. When town acquired this property, it was always intended that development would occur. This area was not envisioned to be an idle asset. While neighbors have a right to be concerned about proposed uses for this property, they should expect that this area will continue to develop as it is a contributing asset for the entire community. He closes by saying, "My advice to neighbors is to work with the entire town council on how this development should occur." And so where I want to take my comments with this is that this is a process that has gotten garbled, really garbled, since we authorized staff to do the zoning text amendments. And, you know, my opinion, it's largely a housekeeping process to periodically, and in this case, it was about 30 years ago, that we are now once again looking inside this campus, this space, and saying, what's logical use for this land? And that's all we were trying to ask staff to do. A once in a generation look at this PUD and the campus and to see if it still made sense. And I think a lot of it really does make sense, breaking it into the 4 areas. And, you know, it was really, looked like it was really a well thought out document. But then the process got derailed. And I think really largely on some miscommunications and misunderstandings that are unfortunate. And so I do think it makes sense to delay it or table it so that we can, as in the closing statement of former Mayor Harmon, work with the neighbors, with the entire town council on how this development should occur. And the irony is that that's what the Planning Commission process meant to do. And somehow it got derailed. That saddens me as a former planning commissioner. But we can't turn back time. We can't undo the miscommunications. And so I would advocate that we do put this on pause, as noted here, until we are in a position to meet more face-to-face and have more meaningful dialogue. And by that, I mean listening and talking and waiting to your turn and listening while the other person talks and just starting over. But not delaying this indefinitely, because this does need to be a contributing asset to our community. This is an area that in recent years, as recent as within this current council, we've talked about the proximity of this area to Route 66 and the potential that this area holds for that tourism opportunity. So I don't want to push this off indefinitely by any means. But I do think we need to reset. And let's play the process better next time and not let it get so garbled. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
I had requested just clarification, and just for my understanding of parliamentary process, in essence, we are tabling this for a future date that is triggered by the mayor's, the governor's moving to phase 5. So rather than what has been happening with pushing this to each successive monthly planning meeting in the expectation that we might be able to meet in person, we're instead saying we are postponing action on this until the Planning Commission is able to meet in person, because under the current understanding of our compliance with pandemic conditions, phase 5 would open up the state in full, and that's when all citizens would have an opportunity to participate. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, Ms. Smith, that is accurate.
Thank you.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. If we pause this and table this, are council now going to be able to talk with the citizens and make changes
You mean, Mr. Nord, first of all, I'm going to ask Mr. Day to unmute and get his camera going. But do you mean, when you say make changes, do you mean to the language of the proposed text amendment?
Yes.
I will let Mr. Day respond to that in a moment, but I just want to remind council, the public hearing has already been convened. And so what I've shared with council, with you in the past, has been, if we change language after the public hearing has already been convened, we certainly need to then make sure we communicate with those who have already gone on the record. There is a record already in terms of the public hearing. So changing language in the middle of a hearing or such probably could be done. I certainly have not been an advocate of that because I don't believe it's an efficient way to do that. So I will let Mr. Day, however, respond to the legal side of that.
Right, and just a little bit of background. This is kind of a unique situation. As we're finding ourselves in more and more unique situations with COVID. This came to the Planning Commission at the very beginning of summer, just as people were starting the remote hearings. The state was just about to move into phase 4, so we weren't really sure when we were going to be getting back to in-person meetings. So there was a lot of unknowns about when we'd be able to come back in person. And in that process, at the beginning of the first half of the Planning Commission's public hearing, they took testimony. They had a number of witnesses who gave testimony on the topic. Then they held it over, and at that point, the Planning Commission committed that they would not reach a final decision until they were able to have an in-person meeting. A unique situation, again, because there was a lot of unknowns at the time. That's not something that I think we would repeat with other zoning matters. Most of these will be handled by remote hearings. This isn't something that every time a zoning matter comes before us, they're going to continue this. This is something that's unique to the way this situation developed. In terms of changing the plan, theoretically, I suppose council could change the application. It would be probably inadvisable just because, as I've said, we've already taken public comment. You've had people supporting the plan who are already, at least one of the witnesses at the public hearing was in full support of the plan. It would be inadvisable, and again, we'd have to look at what kind of actions the council's taken. Because again, remember, you're the ultimate decision makers. Right now, what we're in the process of fact gathering and fact finding. The role of the Plan Commission here is to basically do the fact finding, to make the recommendation to the council. And we don't want to get into a situation where the council's trying to make decisions before the actual facts come out from the Plan Commission.
Okay, so essentially we would be tabling this as is. And there was one member that spoke at that Planning Commission meeting that spoke, or not member, there was one resident that spoke in favor, and she happened to be one of the property owners there. But this was brought forward by the council, not by a property owner. And we've received over 100 emails, and the town staff has probably received more from concerned residents. Just tonight, or since this was announced, we've received, I know there was one batch that was 50, and then probably another at least 20 emails have come in over the past few days that are all opposed to one section. They're not opposed to the entire piece, just one little bit that they're opposed to. So, and it all boils down to they're opposed to making it easier to sell and manufacture alcohol. So, that's something we should keep in mind, that if we table it, that issue is still out there. That's like, we're not settling any of the residents' concerns. If the one property owner wants to bring something forward, recommending to allow alcohol, then that's fine. But the town, or in the letter that Ms. Lorenz read, they did talk about developing out there. Well, the town owns the 3 vacant lots that are in that commercial center there by the Community Action Center. So if we really do want to develop out there, I would like to see us withdraw this and put those properties up for sale. Let the developers know that this property is available to develop on, and then they can develop, find something. Well, hopefully they will find something that they can develop out there within the existing zoning, so that way we're not upsetting our residents. And most of the changes in that plan, people don't have issues with. It just doesn't seem like we're taking this off the table to talk with our residents if we're going to put it to the table. We need to withdraw it and then bring it back at a time when we've gone through the process and taken out the things that are the most offensive. So I'm interested to see if anyone would support withdrawing this altogether and bringing it back in a different version later. Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just want to start by saying supporting this motion is a good decision. I think what it does is it allows for a very public process and open and that's open and transparent for everybody. Not one particular perspective, not one for or against, but what it guarantees is that there's an open public discussion of the process. And that's what we're talking about tonight, is guaranteeing that the public can come and show up and tell us directly and to tell the Planning Commission directly how they feel about a particular thing. And so on that basis alone, I wouldn't support having people brought together, tell them we're considering one thing, and then after they've had a chance to talk, changing it later. I wouldn't do that personally, without guaranteeing that we go through the whole process again, but I still wouldn't do that. We've already put the public through a bunch. We've asked them to come out and give us input, and we told them we were going to come back. And this seems disingenuous to what we've already put the public through and already asked them for. I just want to be, so technically clear. My counterpart, Mr. Noor, just made some comments conflating property ownership with zoning code. Just to be clear, it doesn't matter who owns a property. Zoning code is zoning code. So whether the town owns it or a private developer owns it, it doesn't matter. We're not considering developing the property. We're considering zoning code. And that's what this topic is about. And so regardless of ownership of a piece of property, zoning code is the conversation of what happens with that piece of property or what's allowed to happen in an area with a piece of property. So regardless, zoning code still needs to get addressed, regardless of the ownership of the parcels of the property. If that's something we decide on another matter, we want to talk about selling off property, great, but that's basically irrelevant for this conversation. It's about zoning code, not about property ownership. Also, we've got some feedback I want to clear up. Ms. Lorenz made some comments about misinformation gargling up, and I just want to take a minute to remind the public that when there's an item like this that we placed on our agenda and on the Planning Commission agenda, it is officially on our agenda. The Open Meetings Act then prohibits us from coming together in more than two in a place to have a conversation. And so just to remind the public, we cannot just show up anywhere to have a public conversation without violating a statute and breaking the law. I, for one, won't do that. Knowingly and intentionally break a law, regardless of how I feel about the law or the particular import or issue that's in front of us to talk about. So just to clarify, I believe all of my counterparts certainly have thoughts, and they certainly want to hear and listen to everybody, and not just through emails or through other members of the council. We'd like to have the opportunity to talk with you directly. And the planning commission process ensures that you have the opportunity to talk to the planning commission. And then when it comes back to us, ensures you have an opportunity to talk to us. I don't know why anybody's trying to subvert that process. The planning commission process, then onto the council process, ensures fair, open communication in multiple steps that gives every citizen, whether they support or don't support, a fair opportunity to give the community input. I support this. It's a good decision because waiting till there's a time where we have a fair, open public forum for people to come and communicate with commissioners and then council directly ensures everybody's right to a fair, open communication process. Thanks very much.
Ms. Smith?
I have some personal experience to provide that provides the perspective I bring to this conversation. First of all, I'm 7 of 10, which meant that there were older and bigger people in the household that tended to get their way as I was growing up, and so I have a bias towards any process that promotes the opportunity for all voices to be heard. And I recognize the passion with which neighborhood residents have come together about this project. But I want to remind everyone that, as Mr. McCarthy pointed out, it's a zoning for the town of Normal, and it is intended to encapsulate and promote opinions and feedback and ideas about what would benefit our community as a whole. The neighborhood groups have organized and gotten together to talk about this, but those gatherings are not subject to the Open Meeting Act. And so they are, I'm sure, coming together in consensus to share their thoughts, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other individuals outside that circle that have a different opinion. The process that is in place that was started with our original vote provided the mechanism to involve all of our community in that. And if we were to circumvent that, then we are saying that the process doesn't matter. And that would make us falling back to arbitrary decisions that I disagree with that philosophy. As students who would come to me and ask for exceptions on their grades or redoing something, I would have to tell them that the syllabus was the contract I made with them. And unless they had an individualized education plan, I could not decide, well, I'm going to listen to your story, but when there is a mechanism in place, there is value to following that. And as this approval by the council has pushed this to the planning commission, we are asked to distance ourselves from that process until the planning commission completes their work and their process and presents their vote to us for our consideration at that time. To do otherwise is to thwart the chain of command. And I believe that it is more capricious and arbitrary for us to attempt to do that now. It saddens me to hear residents accuse us of intentionally doing this to distress them and pick out one item and saying, just remove that. Well, there is nothing that we have designed to cause distress. We are simply asking that this property be reviewed. It is in the process to go before the zoning commission first. And now we're saying tonight, we are going to table this until it is possible for everyone to meet in person. And the criteria that we're setting for that is the phase 5. And I am very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Ms. Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to belabor too long, but I do want to reiterate one thing. We do not want to go outside of our process, and that's very important. I want to remind people that there was one person who voted for us not to go through the process. And had we not gone through the process, it would not have allowed us, all citizens and all residents, to have a say in this matter. And that is very important to me. I understand and I thank those who are very passionate about where they stand on an issue, but we have to ensure that everyone has an opportunity. And I do think it is incumbent upon us to take the time to put this on a pause to ensure that everyone has the ability to speak. And once again, one thing that we have to all understand is leadership in each council member at the end of the day will get the final say. So it does have to go through this process. It has to go through the zoning commission and then come before the council. And even if it is just to take one section out of it, the council will have the final say to be able to do that. And that is a part of the process. And we will never get to that part of the process if you don't allow us to even continue to work through this. So I ask that you be patient. And if you don't understand the process, just as openly as you have been about what you desire, also be open to asking us how that process works and how you can be a part of it. Because I think as you come alongside of us within the process, you'll feel even more engaged and even more empowered. So I implore you to do that tonight. Be patient with us, but I want all of you to know I support us putting this on hold so every voice is heard.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't want to be redundant, but I will stand behind our process pretty vigorously. I think that this action tonight is a real, the way I view it, and I would hope that others do too, is a real positive for people with strong opinions on this topic or on the specific proposed acceptable use of alcohol in one of the sub areas. This is a positive thing, how I look at it. You know, there is no rushing this through the public hearing process. There is no trying to get Planning Commission to take this up quickly during a pandemic when not everyone would be comfortable, not everyone would be able to be part of that. We would not be limited by technology by trying to do entirely remote. And then should individuals have technological issues, they would be limited in their capacity to be part of the public hearing process. By delaying this until the state of Illinois is in phase 5 is a win across the board for anybody in the public, neighbors, people in Normal who have an opinion on this, to be able to make their voice heard in that process. I feel like the town of Normal with this action is doing everything that it can to make the public hearing process as open, as convenient, as accessible to anybody who wants to be heard on this. And that, I would think, is a big win. Now, once we get to that point, then the conversation takes place. But tonight we're talking about process. The alcohol issue, which is one that I've heard a lot about, that will come. Tonight's process, I think this process is open to everybody, and it's a great action to be able to take up than the issue of alcohol and everything else with this zoning issue. Thanks.
Thank you. I think I'm going to wrap this up and just say, you know, I have a lot of opinions about this, but now's not the time for me to express my opinion. In the sense that at such time as it goes through the public process at Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission gives us a recommendation, I'll have much to say about where we're going with this. But I'm keeping my mouth shut right now and letting the Planning Commission do their job. Please call the roll.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
Aye.
Mrs.
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The motion is approved. That concludes our omnibus. We have one item of general orders, and that is a motion to receive and accept the bicycle and pedestrian master plan update.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
And
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to jump in if that's all right, Mayor Coos. I first want to introduce town staff that led this initiative with the consultants. So I do want to thank Town Planner Mercy Davison and City Engineer Ryan Otto. They were referenced earlier by a public commenter, but I also want to reiterate our appreciation for their time that they've dedicated to this process. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Davison, who's going to introduce the presenter from Alta Planning.
Thank you, Ms. Reese. I'm happy to present Kevin Neal to you tonight. Kevin is a planner with Alta. He's located in the St. Louis office, and he is joining us via Zoom tonight and has a presentation he'll be screen sharing with us. Kevin, take it away.
All right, thank you, Ms. Davison. Mayor Coos, members of the council, I appreciate your time this evening, and I'm excited to provide you with a summary of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan update. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and if you could just confirm that you're seeing a beginning slide for the presentation. Great, thank you. Well, it's been just over a year since we initiated this project, and I'm excited to bring to you the final plan to help guide the town of Normal's investments in biking and walking to help realize the vision of a safer, more connected community for people of all ages and abilities to get out and enjoy public spaces and access the destinations that make Normal special. My name, as Mercy mentioned, is Kevin Neal. I'm a planning associate and office manager for Alta's St. Louis, Missouri office. We're a firm that specializes in walking and biking, planning, design, engineering, wayfinding. We have about 185 folks on staff that specialize in a variety of different issues and areas of expertise. And we're excited to bring those resources to bear on this project. I'm going to go over a few things tonight, starting with the plan background, running through the planning process and community engagement activities, and then talk about the plan's vision, goals, and recommendations, and conclude just by looking at what steps the town of Normal can take to bring this plan to life. This plan, as I mentioned at the onset, is an update to the 2009 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, which Alta provided consulting services to develop as well. And that plan really laid the groundwork for a lot of the work that's happened in the last decade, from developing physical infrastructure to support walking and biking, a lot of investments in sidewalk and ADA infrastructure, on-street bikeways, and continued trail development to really help connect neighborhoods, business districts, and other destinations across the community. As a result of the town's efforts, the town was awarded a bicycle-friendly community status at the bronze level from the League of American Bicyclists in 2014 and again in 2018. And this plan also laid the foundation for the adoption of the Complete Streets Ordinance in 2016, which is a policy statement to build, design, maintain roads in a way to support people of all ages and abilities, regardless of their mode of transportation. And as the town is looking ahead towards the future of biking and walking, they began to consider why there's a need to update this plan. And there's two main reasons as we saw it at the beginning of the planning process. Changing needs. 10 years is a long time for any community, and the needs, values, aspirations can change pretty quickly over time. In addition, the tools the town has available with regard to facility planning and design have changed rapidly in the last 10 years. communities across the United States are really rethinking how public transportation infrastructure can support people of different backgrounds, different needs, and using very innovative tools to do that. And so this plan created the opportunity not just to capture that forward-looking vision of where people are at now and where they want to be, but also bring to bear those best practices and innovative facilities and design practices that can help really bring that vision to life, realize that vision. So as I mentioned, the planning process has taken about a year for us to get from initiation the end of August. We kicked things off. And during the course of that process, we began first with an examination of current conditions, and moved our way through the development of vision and goals, and then began to build around that vision recommendations for physical infrastructure, programs, and other policies to really help create a holistic approach to support walking and biking. And then throughout the spring and summer, we worked to develop implementation strategies to help bring the plan to create action for the planning process and move the plan beyond acceptance by the council into action by town staff. Ultimately, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan update is a guide. It's a guide to use for use by staff, by town council, to help direct investments in walking and biking, and also to be utilized for the procurement of external funding sources, either through federal or state grant opportunities, or even private foundation grant opportunities. And we want to make sure those opportunities are known to the town, and also that they're taken advantage of where possible and used to leverage local resources to maximize investments in biking and walking. As you saw in that process slide, during the course of the project, there were numerous points through which community residents and other stakeholders provided input and guidance to help shape the plan. One of the first actions that we took as a project team was to convene a project steering committee. And that committee consisted of community stakeholders like ISU, Unit 5, Friends of the Constitution Trail, Connect Transit, running clubs, and even a number of community residents to help not just steer the plan at critical junctures during the process, but also to serve as a conduit between the planning team and the larger community. It gave us an opportunity to hear from a lot of different voices during the process. And with their help, we saw engagement throughout the plan come in at a very high level, which we were very excited to see. That first came through with our online survey, where we saw over 400 responses in the course of, I believe it was under 3 months' time, which is a pretty phenomenal response rate for a community of just over 50,000. I can tell you anecdotally, in a county in the St. Louis metropolitan area of 100 million residents, I believe on a bicycle and pedestrian project, we saw less than 1,000 responses. So we take that to be a good sign that the community at large is interested in and wants to communicate their desires for walking and biking. And that's really been a motivational factor for us as a planning team to see that community support and guidance throughout the process. We held an open house with about 40 attendees last November to help learn about existing conditions from the perspective of community residents, as we believe they're the experts on the ground every day and have intimate knowledge of the kind of conditions, barriers, obstacles that affect walking and biking. Over the course of the winter and early spring months, town staff conducted a number of community meetings across the town and met with neighborhood associations, student groups, ISU staff, running clubs, Friends of the Constitution Trail, and helped us gain a better understanding of some unique perspectives across the community. We held at the tail end of the planning process a plan review and comment period. And this process was to some extent a replacement for what would have been a second traditional open house meeting, but due to restrictions on social distancing and other measures taken to promote the safety and well-being of community residents, we felt that this opportunity of draft plan review and comment period would still give residents the opportunity to share with us their comments, their input, feedback on the plan. We, throughout the course of the process, had built an extensive email list and also took advantage of the town's social media and other communication channels to publicize this plan review period. And as a result, we received over 60 comments from community residents and interested individuals in neighboring communities, sharing their comments, both positive and negative, on the plan document. And as a result, we addressed a few of those comments in our plans, but overall, we felt the comments were generally in favor of the plan. And with that, we provided the final document to council that you've seen for today's meeting. So the plan vision, this vision statement really encapsulates those aspirations for community residents as they've communicated to us throughout the planning process. Walking, bicycling, and accessing transit in the town of Normal are safe, easy, and routine parts of daily life for people of all ages and abilities. It sounds like a simple sentence, but there's a lot of meaning packed into that. Safe, easy, routine, these really demonstrate the extent to which this plan seeks to integrate walking and biking as accessible modes of transportation, open to people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. And to achieve that vision, we've structured a framework of goals and objectives that touch on 6 key values or themes, from connectivity and safety to equity, quality of life, environment, and economy. Walking and biking, particularly walking and biking infrastructure, really have a large impact on a number of different, they touch a community in many different ways. And we've tried to recognize and identify opportunities through which these resources can support other goals and objectives and build on previous planning efforts, not just the original Bike Ped Master Plan, but also build on themes expressed through the town's comprehensive plan and other studies and documents that we reviewed during the course of this project. The recommendation section of the plan is divided into a few key components, and the first of which is the pedestrian network. And as you may have seen in the boards that were placed at the City Hall and made available online, we identified a number of different facility types that support walking and biking. And these are kind of the building blocks of the pedestrian network. Sidewalks, shared use path or trails like the Constitution Trail, and side paths, which are in essence trails that are adjacent to a roadway. So you see some of those are part of the Constitution Trail system. Unlike simply a wide sidewalk, there are other design features that support bicycling, which is a higher speed vehicle compared to walking and has unique design considerations. The pedestrian network recommendations, as you'll see on this map, are extensive. And what we see here is that the focus is on really creating connections across the community, bringing people together, and at the heart, or kind of maybe more so the spine of that transportation system for walking, is the Constitution Trail. And we've identified a number of potential corridors for additional trail development, either on road or adjacent to creeks and other natural areas. And these opportunities, as you can see, are fairly extensive. And that's why we must consider this plan a long-range planning document. We know that new trails cost money. So do new sidewalks and other physical improvements. But to be able to use this document as a guide and help identify projects that best meet specific needs or can be incorporated into other capital improvements so as to achieve some economies of scale in capital improvement investments. We think that there are quite a few different ways that this plan can really be executed. With the bicycle network recommendations, the facility types available really range from mixed traffic facilities on, say, lower volume, lower speed neighborhood roads, where people feel more comfortable sharing a travel lane with motor vehicles, to dedicated bicycle lanes, like we have a few around town right now, separated bicycle lanes, which use additional physical features to separate people bicycling from people driving. And then, of course, trails and side paths. We know the town of Normal is blessed to have one of the most extensive trail systems in the region. And it's really a jewel, not just to community residents, but also to attract recreational tourists and potentially to serve as a catalyst for economic development and social gatherings. It really just has a lot going for it, the Constitution Trail. There's a few, as you can see on this map, a few more colors than there were on the pedestrian map, and those different colors represent different facility types. There's a lot of detail to this map, but in addition to those linear corridors with dashed lines representing proposed facilities and solid lines representing existing facilities, you'll also notice a number of icons placed at intersections, trail crossings, and other locations. And these are intersection or trail crossing enhancements. And those are designed, while not designed with a level of detail that an engineering study or plan might develop at a master plan level, we're identifying those locations for future study. But we know that one of the biggest barriers to walking and biking right now are intersections, either controlled intersections along major roadways like Main Street or Veterans, but also trail crossing that we've heard a lot about during the course of this plan, particularly a couple intersections on Vernon Avenue and elsewhere along the Illinois Central spine of the trail system. So in addition to those linear and spot improvements that we identified, we also point to a number of community-wide improvements, from wayfinding and traffic calming elements to trail enhancements and mobility hubs. We want to make sure that in this plan, we're not just pointing to specific corridors for development, but also looking at opportunities to make all streets and public spaces more comfortable, more safe, and more convenient for people traveling by bike and foot, particularly for those residents who use mobility assistance devices or have limited mobility, who are more impacted by physical design of our public infrastructure. To support those infrastructure investments, we've also identified a number of program recommendations, and this really builds on some of the key themes and ideas from the 2009 plan, looking at different ways to activate those public spaces, create an environment of mutual respect and responsibility for people traveling on our roadways, and to really have people feel welcome and encouraged to get out and travel and explore the community by walking and biking. Our policy recommendations in the plan are fairly direct in terms of the particular themes that we're addressing. We know that with the availability of a lot of different design innovations, there is an opportunity to update the city's manual of practice, which sets the design standards for streets, sidewalks, and trails. We also have looked at a number of ways in which the town can monitor implementation of this plan and track that through specific evaluation criteria or metrics like bicycle and pedestrian mode share, and number of crashes involving people walking and biking, to really see how those investments are having an impact on travel behavior and travel patterns throughout the community. We know that this planning process is just the beginning as far as future investments in walking and biking are concerned, and that in order to implement individual projects, the town will continue to reach out to impacted community residents through the design and construction process, as they always have. And we've identified some additional strategies to really help make that process as much of a two-way conversation, a dialogue between community residents and town staff. So that way, projects that are implemented as a result of this plan really do reflect the desires and aspirations of community residents. When we look at implementing the plan itself, the final chapter of the plan document contains a number of elements, but begins first by exploring early actions for the town to take. The planning process itself has created some momentum and has really built a discussion among community residents about the future of biking and walking. And we want to take that energy and use that to positive effect. And in doing so, there are a few different projects that we think are important, from studying those trail crossings, which have gotten a lot of attention during the planning process, and we know are critical to the success of the system at large, but also individual segments of the Constitution Trail. Bicycle events like bicycle rodeos or other educational opportunities, particularly for underrepresented neighborhoods and communities. We're also exploring in those early actions numerous sidewalk and trail improvements that really address a few critical gaps in the network and really help create the connections that will encourage people to get out and take advantage of the assets that the town has for walking and biking already. So that concludes the formal presentation. And before I open it up for any questions, I'd just like to thank you all again, Mayor, Council, town staff, and particularly the community residents who've really put their heart and soul into this plan. And we hope that this document will serve a valuable purpose for years to come. And we thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this process.
Excuse me, Mayor Coos, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. I think you saw that working with this community, that the Constitution Trail is a treasured asset to this community. And steps to improve it are certainly due after 10 some years of our initial plan. And I'm so encouraged by the participation of the citizens of our community working with town staff to get their voices heard and let people understand, or let town staff understand what people really wanted out of their trail system going forward. So thank you for the good work, and thank you town staff for doing such great work as well. At this point, are there any questions for Mr. Neal? Ms. Cummings.
Sure, if I really have a question, more so just wanting to commend all the work, not only from Ulta and Mr. Neal, but to all those who served on the steering committee. You know, one of the things that is a good measure of a great community is its movement towards multimodal transportation. As we see that we're trying to push our communities to be more green friendly, which will, you know, and as you spoke on, you know, reducing emissions, as well as socioeconomics that can play into it as having an alternative way of transportation. I just like that, you know, the time that was put into it to really look at all those things. And absolutely, as we've talked about multiple times on our council, the accessibility. How else can we make this community more accessible for all residents? And so I really appreciate all the attention and to detail that was taken in redoing and actually upgrading our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So I want to say thank you to everyone, and I look forward to actually seeing it being put into action.
Mr. Nord.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you put into putting this together. It looks like there was quite a lot of thought to go into it. The question, when did the citizen engagement start? Was that after the COVID restrictions?
I think, as I recall, and Ms. Davidson can speak to that, I think it started in late 2019.
It did, and Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong, but we had the open house was, I think it was November of 2019, so that was completely prior to COVID. And then we were able to get a bunch of public meetings in basically before the holidays in 2019, and then in January, early February, when people were still, you know, meeting. So all of that was pre kind of shutdown, and then it was really the last piece that was, you know, completely virtual.
Okay, something that's come before the council through email a few times, and I've been contacted quite a number of times regarding the trail, are the signs that are in the middle of the street on Rab Road, and there's a couple other sign locations. Was that input received and then included in this master plan?
Yeah, we got, I think I said in my report that like 5 or 6 of the comments in this most recent request for comments were about trail crossings. We had received some just over the course of like meeting with people. We certainly heard about it, and that's why one of the early start recommendations in the plan is to look at the crossings again. And I will not speak to the technicalities of the design as to how the signs are now, and Ryan should probably comment on that, but it's certainly something we heard and is accounted for in the plan.
Okay, is Ryan going to speak about it, or?
Yeah, he just unmuted. Sorry, Mr. Nord.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Otto.
Yes, the trail crossings on particularly Vernon, but also going north on Willow, Shelbourne, Rab Road. We definitely heard about those during the open house, as well as during the public comments. We intend to look at those as part of an early action project, take a look at what else can be done, as well as the signs that are currently there meet all standards, but we're certainly aware that there are other things that can make pedestrians and motorists more aware of each other. So anything we can do to make those two entities more aware of surroundings, we think makes it safer. So definitely going to look at that. One question that has come up is whether or not we intend to put the current motorist must stop for pedestrians sign on the Vernon crossings. And the answer to that is no. The reason for that is we don't believe it's appropriate in my engineering judgment to put that type of sign on a 4-lane road where there's concern about one lane of traffic stopping and the other not. So we don't intend to put those signs on the Vernon crossing.
Okay, but this doesn't end that conversation. Citizens can still talk about the safety issues because there was somebody who contacted us or contacted me, was it last week, that somebody on Summit, that crossing, there was an accident there. I'm not sure what that was about, but those safety issues will still come until, well, they'll probably come forever. But another thing was a resident had contacted the council saying that they would like this to be delayed because, you know, they weren't able to give their input. And I don't want to close this conversation because the next time is going to be in 5 to 10 years is what the write-up said. How set in stone is that?
Well, Mr. Nord, I'll jump in. The plan update typically comes in 5 to 10 years. The implementation of the plan is ongoing. So the conversations regarding how to make our pedestrian and bicycle network safer, to connect the community better, those conversations will be ongoing. So there will be continued opportunities to hear from residents on that concern specifically about the trail crossings that we've heard from some. But the 5 to 10 years is just the plan update component. It's not the implementation of the component of the plan.
Okay. Then I would like to see us allow the group that wanted to come in and talk about the signs be able to do that, because one of the last emails was that they could do it at this council meeting. But whenever we can start meeting in person, you know, I'd like to open it up that they could come. It doesn't, and not require them to speak only when the bike plan is on the agenda, just to accommodate that request, which came forward. Then one other question is, could you explain how the prioritization of the network was defined? The high priority, medium, low priority.
Well, sure.
Additional routes.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Nord, for your question. The identification of our prioritization process really began with trying to link prioritization criteria to specific needs or goals from the plan. So we looked at prioritization primarily as a way to represent the impact that each project could have on the bicycle and pedestrian system. Those included factors like connections to existing bikeways or pedestrian facilities, connections to existing community destinations like schools, parks, business districts, uptown, Normal, safety considerations, crash history along some of those corridors, and ultimately what type of facility is being recommended. Some of those facilities can create a more inclusive and welcoming environment like a trail or a separated on-street bikeway, whereas a signed bicycle route may not attract as much riding or be as welcoming to a diverse audience. So the results of that prioritization process really speak only to the impact that that project can have on the system. Then when it comes to actually implementing those recommendations or phasing them over time, that would be a decision process primarily done, you know, as part of the capital improvements planning and ongoing coordination, I think, between staff. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Mercy or Ryan.
No, I think that hits it on the head. I mean, there is the idea that you've got kind of black and white factors you can look at and say, you know, this improvement is going to take you to a school or is going to take you to a bus stop. Those are pretty black and white. But then down the road, you're looking at factors like, is there a grant opportunity that we weren't aware of that pertains to a different project, or geographic location? Sometimes we need to make improvements in a certain part of the community, and maybe they don't score a lot of those other points, but there are other reasons for supporting it. Partnership opportunities that arise somewhat unexpectedly. So there are other factors that you can't plan for in advance, but that you have to constantly evaluate, which is why prioritization is an ongoing exercise.
The other
thank you,
factor that we,
because-
excuse me.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say that from looking at the map, you know, I think a higher priority, and especially from listening to some of the comments at the beginning of the meeting, you know, having a route close to a neighborhood, close to your home, is something that attracts people to live in that neighborhood. And I would like to see that as, you know, a higher priority than, say, taking a route out where there's few, if any, homes, just extending, you know, the distance beyond residents. And I see that along Constitution Trail, we're pushing out, or along College Avenue, we're pushing out west 2 miles, and there's no homes out there. So I don't want to get into the details tonight, but by approving this plan, we're not pushing forward with approving any spending. This is just a plan, and priorities can change as time goes on and different needs and money comes before us. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. It is a plan, and where the spending comes in is the implementation of the plan. Implementation is ongoing, it's prioritization, it's funding. So implementation will be an ongoing conversation every year when we do the community investment plan, when the council adopts the budget, and it will be continuing conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks, Mayor. First, I'd like to start out and thank all of those who were involved in this process, involved from the steering committee to the presenter tonight, to the 7 individuals who spoke, and especially a shout out to Mr. McHugh, who I felt represented a really important voice that is ever so important in this conversation about accessibility. And I was really glad to hear his remarks and everyone else's tonight. Thank you for putting in the time, putting in the interest and the effort to be part of this quite elaborate and well thought out process. I do have a question. I want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly. So when I'm looking at the proposed bikeway improvements, the map that is, I don't know what page number it is, but probably a question for the gentleman from Alta. It looks as though the green dotted line, shared use path and trail, that kind of is one of the categories there throughout that map. That would be the, let's see, shared use path and trail. That would be consistent with what the Constitution Trail is now currently, correct? That is not part of an existing roadway. It is actually its own separate paving, not part of a vehicular roadway. Is that correct?
That is correct. That would be outside the curb to curb width of the road itself.
Okay. I asked that, and without getting into too many specifics, Towanda Avenue caught my eye because it, I believe, is the dark green that would propose that going from Northtown all the way down, you know, past Fort Jesse. And I'm thinking of that stretch of Towanda Avenue. You go over a bridge that's already fairly tight over the interstate, just north of Ironwood, just south of Ironwood, north of Rab. And then again, you go over, while it's wider, another bridge over the railroad between Shelbourne and Fort Jesse. And I'm picturing in my mind, if something like this were to come, you know, get pursued, what actually does it look like and what does it entail specifically along that stretch, being that you're dealing with some different dynamics of the roadway. So I appreciate that clarification. overall, I just want to reiterate again my appreciation for you and all of the individuals who put time into this. Thank you for doing so, and thank you for caring about your community. And I'm glad that this plan will serve as something that I'm sure we will reference often moving forward as we look at capital projects and other ways to continue furthering the quality of life here in Normal and the community. Thanks.
Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to join my counterparts in thanking really the public, our citizens, our residents for getting involved and getting engaged and telling us what you want. As Mr. Preston mentioned, I was very excited to hear Mr. McHugh's comments. That's a perspective we don't often get in our citizen engagements. And I want to thank you personally for listening, for coming out, but it also shows the involvement, the evolution in town process and our ability to attract people that will come and give us input about the future of our community. And to that, I say thank you, Mr. Neal and town staff, for creating an environment that people feel comfortable to come and give their input. I can't underestimate the value of that enough. We can set up meetings, but if people don't feel comfortable in coming and talking, then it's really not an opportunity. And clearly, the public commenters, the amount of input that you've highlighted tonight in your presentation, Mr. Neal, is a testament to that evolution. Since the beginning of the plan, I was personally involved and gave input in the first two versions of this plans. I intentionally stayed away this time. As my role in councilman, wanted to make sure that that didn't unduly influence the process, but wonderful to hear that. I guess I also want to say that in that vein, that this is really a great example that the town cares about and values the input of our residents dramatically. This is certainly not our only public input plan. There's a vast majority of them, the comprehensive plan, Planet Normal process that the Planning Commission undertook on behalf of the town of Normal. And it shows the great lengths that our staff is willing to go to make sure that that comfortable environment for public input is given. There's a lot of great features. I won't go over some of what the public commenters have highlighted and what Mr. Neal, you've highlighted in your plan. I'll ask the community to, if you haven't seen this, please read it and look at it. It's a great, wonderful evolution of a plan. But to me, what makes this a great plan isn't all of those details. I mean, they certainly make it a good comprehensive plan, and we've built on what's been happening for over 25 years in our community. But what makes this as a great plan is that it's not the council's plan. It's the public's plan. The public came together, facilitated by our consultant and by some town staff, to tell us what's so important to them about this asset that we all love. What's their vision for it? What do they see the future need for it? And that's what makes this a really great plan. It's our residents' plan. It belongs to them. We're receiving and accepting their input tonight and saying, we've heard you, we understand your priorities, and we're going to do our best to act on your input for your vision of our Constitution Trail. I'm supportive. Thanks.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you. A couple of items. Mr. Neal, could you cite again the stats on the responses and the comparison you made to other communities much larger that you'd worked with?
Certainly. I mentioned that during our survey period in the fall and winter of last year, I think it was from mid-October through the end of 2019, we received, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 430 to 450 survey responses. And just, for comparison, I wanted to point out a project we're working on in a St. Louis area county, where in a county with over 1 million residents, we received under 1,000 survey responses similarly. And I think that speaks to the point of the for one, a large county can be difficult to bring everybody in together under a process like this. But in a community like Normal, it really does reflect, I think, the interest people have in the sense of place people feel for the town. And that kind of engagement is very special for a planning process like this, and something that we did not take for granted as we worked our way through the planning process and really tried to capture the spirit and the specifics of what we were hearing over the course of the plan.
And I know the report sets out all the different stakeholders that were involved in this work, from ISU representatives, running and bike clubs that participated, town staff, and some other parties. Do you see that typical diversity of involvement, and what does that outreach bring to the discussions?
It's fairly common. There are some limitations depending on a project's scope, size, budget. But for a project of this nature, I would say that this is fairly common. I think one of the benefits of that the town of Normal has is that a lot of these stakeholders regularly connect on diversity of projects. So when Mercy and Ryan convened that steering committee for the project, for many people, it wasn't their first time in contact with some of the other people in the room. And so the dialogue really helped shape the plan development, the plan content. But I'd also say that one of the benefits of bringing those different perspectives together was that in a lot of ways, those stakeholders really represented larger populations or segments of the community. So we were able not only to hear those different opinions throughout the process, but utilize those connections that we had through our steering committee to help us communicate the plan to wider audiences. And I think that resulted in a very robust engagement process, and one that added, I think, to the quality of the final product.
And one final question, and I don't know who to direct this to. Why do you think you were able to get such a significant response rate? Were you using new avenues of communication or piggybacking on some of these network connections that were already in place? And can we adapt that practice to some other things of just getting the word out?
Well, I mean, I can say from our end, we did a lot of outreach to groups. We just tried to think of who could we contact who could then forward it to their people, because they know their people, but we know who they, we can find a point person, but then they can find all their own people. So we did blast this out multiple times to different groups. I mean, we sent it to not just like athletic groups or running clubs. I mean, we sent it to just, all the commissions, anybody who's on a board or commission, anybody who responded to the survey over last winter. We kept their email addresses and then we blasted them all too. That was 400 and some people. We reached out to groups like LifeSil and Autism McLean, and we tried to meet with a couple, and then sometimes that didn't work. But really getting to people through targeted email seems to be really pretty good, and then directing them to an online portal. So,
well, I commend you for that effort, and it is a challenge to go from a childhood where there were only 3 major networks and two newspapers, to have so many outlets. It can be a challenge to communicate. So thank you to everyone for this effort, and that is all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Lorenz.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Neal, and then I'll follow up with one for staff. For Mr. Neal, I was kind of intrigued by the question from one of our commenters, Mr. Farnsworth, who spoke at some length about Veterans Parkway. Can you just kind of paint how does a community literally bridge that barrier? Like he said, it's almost like a river that cuts through the community.
It can have that effect. And I think that's a great question. And I will say that while Normal has its Veterans Parkway, there are a lot of other communities that have their own Veterans Parkway, and that it's not unique. In a lot of cases, communities struggle to find that balance between throughput of motor vehicles on what's ultimately a state highway, and the needs of other transportation users, access to those local destinations. Controlling access can be a challenge on a road like that. And ultimately, that can create additional problems for people walking and biking, fewer crossing opportunities. I know that the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington have both worked with IDOT to support pedestrian enhancements along that corridor. It is a challenge, not just from a kind of high level planning perspective of how you move people across that corridor where there's plenty of destinations, but from a design perspective, you're looking at a right of way of well over 100, 150 feet. And that creates challenges for grade separated crossings. And a lot of cases, you know, the price tag associated with those investments can be very cost prohibitive. So I know that some of the steps taken recently to enhance pedestrian crossings, adding push button countdown timers, even push buttons mid-block across the median to support a 2-phase crossing. These have taken, you know, considered small, excuse me, incremental improvements, but there's still more that can be done. And I think the town of Normal is on the right path in communicating with IDOT on this corridor as well as on Main Street to really ensure that those corridors that are intended to serve you know, as primary arterials for motor vehicle traffic also address the safety and connectivity needs of all transportation system users. So I think there's some good things going on, but we know that there are challenges still to be faced, and we hope that the plan's recommendations keep some of those intersections and crossings along Veterans on everyone's radar.
Okay, thank you. Well, then my question to staff has to do with the coordination with the city of Bloomington. So we had at least one speaker who represented west side of Bloomington. And how is it that we are going to coordinate with Bloomington on this master plan?
Well, I'll certainly start and then I'll defer to Mr. Otto and Ms. Davison, but you know, much of this conversation in terms of coordinating with Bloomington also includes coordination with McLean County Regional Planning.
Okay.
And so we work together to share our plans and our strategies and opportunities for trail extensions and other projects that might involve Main Street or perhaps Veterans Parkway. But I will ask Mr. Otto if he has any specific thoughts regarding coordination with Bloomington.
Thank you, Ms. Reese. One of the things we do is we meet regularly with the city and the county and the Regional Planning Commission, but also with IDOT District 5 staff. So we try to communicate the needs of our community to District 5. They plan for the entire region really with the highways, and they're looking at projects all the way from Paris, Illinois, all the way up to the town of Normal. So they have a broad region, so we try to highlight some of our needs on their transportation system and make sure that they're aware of not only our plans, but also what we're seeing on the ground in terms of infrastructure. We try to coordinate with them closely when they're going to do a project to make sure that we're involved. One of the projects that they're currently working on is what we call a phase one, which is a preliminary design process for Main Street corridor. So that would impact the town from our south border at Division all the way up to potentially Gregory Street. So looking at what that might look like in terms of multimodal improvements, sidewalk, trail, bike lanes, what is that corridor going to look like in the near future? Construction on that could be potentially 5 years out. So we're in the very early stages of that conversation, but we definitely are talking to them. And then Veterans Parkway, a lot of the projects on that involve resurfacing right now. So just looking at improvements that can be implemented opportunistically with some of the plans that they have and how we might improve the pedestrian, the bicycle network in that area.
Okay, good, thanks.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further comments, please call the roll.
Mr. Nord.
Yeah.
Ms. Smith.
We're on mute there.
I did hear him say aye, but it was a little soft.
I didn't hear it.
I did. I've got headphones on. Aye is my vote, Ms. Honaker.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Ms. Cummings. Ms. Cummings.
Aye.
And Mr. Nord, just so we have you on the recording. Thumbs up from Mr. Nord. All right, Mayor Kus.
Aye. Motion to receive and the plan is approved. Thank you, Mr. Neal. Thank you, Ms. Davidson and Mr. Otto for all the great work. And as pointed out earlier, a whole slew of citizens who weighed in on this and made this go forward. Before that concludes our business, before taking a motion for adjournment, are there
No,
comments or concerns?
Mr. Mayor, I think you have an appointment under
I'm
new
sorry,
business.
you're right. Wasn't looking at my agenda. We have a motion. If I can find my agenda, there we go. A motion to approve an appointment to Planning Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Ms. Cummings.
Aye.
Mr. Nord.
Nay.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The appointment is approved. Mr. McCarthy, would you read that appointment, please?
Certainly. This is tonight. We have filled a vacancy for the Planning Commission that was created by the resignation of Mr. Tejas Jani as he relocated outside of the town of Normal. We thank him for his diligent service on the Planning Commission. And we appointed somebody familiar to this council and the community at large, R.C. McBride. He's an ISU graduate and works for ISU. Many of us know him as the general manager for WGLT and WCBU in Peoria now. He and his wife have been in the community since 1997. He's been involved in many, many things in our community. Most familiar to many of us, RC was a planning commission member from 2006 to 2015. He was also on this very council from 2015 through 2019. He's also very involved in ISU athletics and some other athletics in the community, most notably being GSA. He's on the board. He's coached there. Unit 5, CAC, Miller Park Zoological Society. He's been very active in our community. He also teaches in the ISU School of Communication and serves as a television play-by-play broadcaster for the Missouri Valley Conference and various tournaments. He and his wife have school-age daughters here in the community. He's filling a vacancy that will expire on March the 31st of 2021. We welcome R.C. McBride back to public service.
Thank you. And now we'll go to concerns before a motion for adjournment. Mr. McCarthy?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. A couple of things I just want to highlight. In our previous discussion of the agenda item about the state-funded program that can help the town of Normal and potentially citizens with funding, I do want to remind everybody that the town is participating in the CARES Act program that can provide financial assistance support for our community members hurt by the pandemic. The town is partnering with Mid Central Community Action for the program to support our citizens. I just want to remind everybody that that's out there since that conversation came up earlier. You can find information about that on the town's website and I believe on the town Facebook page also. I think I've seen it there as well. So if anybody has any questions or wants to avail themselves of that program, that is currently going on still. Do I have that right, Ms. Reese? That is ongoing program? Yeah.
That is true, yes.
Okay. Also, I have gotten a significant number of questions about what are we doing for Halloween and what's going on out there. I do want to remind everybody that the city of Bloomington, the town of Normal Police Department have come out directly to say we encourage you not to go door to door for obvious reasons going on in the public health crisis going on. But if you do decide to do that, they've put out tips for being safe and how to keep yourself and others safe if you should do so. And they're out there and available on the town's website. Another example of a good partnership between our two communities to leverage tips to try to keep everybody in our community safe. But I also do want to call out that the town this year is departing from our treat feast for public safety reasons and have come up with Candy Corn Lane. And I want to just say thanks to the town staff for scrambling and trying to come up with some way to celebrate, but do it safely. For those of you that haven't heard of this yet, I thought it was very creative. It's a drive-through version of Trick or Treat. It keeps everybody safe. People in costumes and handing out candy. The event takes place on 2 successive Fridays. It's this Friday, October the 9th, and the following Friday, October the 16th, is at One Normal Plaza. It runs between 6:30 and 9 p.m. You can find more information about that on the town website and on the town Facebook page, but a socially distant, safe way to participate and get your kids out and see some costumes and still enjoy a little bit of the holiday. Thanks, everybody.
Ms. Smith.
I just wanted to piggyback on some of the information that Mr. McCarthy was sharing because in a recent meeting that the NAACP had that they shared Bloomington resources for COVID relief. And in communicating with Ms. Reese, she did confirm that Normal does have those dollars available. And beyond what Mr. McCarthy had, is all of that information only on the town website or when someone is looking for information, say about rent relief or food packages and whatever, what are the best avenues to pursue information for those kinds of services?
I would, if okay with the mayor, I'll respond on the spot. I do have Ms. Davison and Mr. Long on this call to answer any questions that might come up regarding COVID, so they can certainly supplement this in terms of COVID relief. We, of course, do have information on our website. PATH also included information in their Pathogram newsletter, which went out, I believe, just last Friday. and also various agencies are promoting this information. So I will defer to Mr. Lawn, who can share specific information about how residents can access this.
Sure, and thank you, Ms. Reese and Ms. Smith. Your colleague and City Manager Reese have kind of said the best ways to get in contact here. So I would just encourage you, if you have anybody listening or anybody that you come in contact with, just have them either contact me, contact staff, or probably the best thing is to just call 211. Always probably the best thing to do here locally is call PATH, talk to them, give them a little bit of information, tell them your situation, the exact kind of needs you might have, if it relates to COVID or not. Just talk to 211 and they keep our program and all others on a list and just forward people in the right direction. So
Thank you. And to flesh out some of the details on the Candy Corn Lane that Parks and Rec has developed, it is October the 9th and October the 16th from 6:30 to 9. It is $5 per vehicle. And the stated information is that children 12 and under will receive a treat bag. But I did confirm with Ms. Reese that if you have a SOAR participant who tends to be rather childlike at any age, they are welcome to participate in this, because I know that I use Bella as cover for me enjoying the friendly haunted trail. And so it's nice to have that ability to get in there and treat the child in yourself when you've got that kind of cover. So feel free to participate. The cars will be lining up on Lincoln Avenue and south onto Beach. So heads up to the neighborhood. You may see some cars in that area this weekend. And please, everybody be patient.
Thank you all. Motion for adjournment.
Almost.
So moved. Second.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.